Hey there, today we are creating rules for load balancers in AWS using PowerShell. Hey, this is Tom's Tech Show, and today we're going to cover creating some rules in a load balancer using PowerShell. And why would I need to do this, I guess, is the question. Typically, right, a load balancer is there to do what it says, balance load. You have an entry point, and then behind that you'll have two servers or more, and traffic coming in will be split between those servers, and then as traffic grows and gets heavier, Amazon has rules that you could say, okay, we're at this level, so that things might be slowing down for our customers. So let's create a third server, fourth server, fifth server, however far you want to go with that. And then when traffic gets lower, it'll start shutting servers down and deleting them so you're not paying for those resources during low traffic times. Well, another thing that you can do with it is say you have several different web services. Service 1, Service 2, Service 3, and they do different functions. But you want to you don't need them load balanced. You don't need them, to grow or shrink or anything else. They're just there. They're fixed. But you want to use a load balancer still to apply the SSL certificate, to have the SSL certificate automatically renew in Amazon, so it makes it easy. You don't have to go and try and manage it or put them on manually every year and go back and try and manage that, or set up some automated system on your own that you cobble together to make work, that might break, that might have some other problems. So we want to make this getting SSL easy. Well, if we do that with rules in the load balancer, then Amazon handles all of it. Okay, so to start with, we need to do a few things if we're going to create a script to do this. We're going to, of course, we need to import the PowerShell module. Then we need to get some data, right? We need the VPC, we need our certificate that we're using, and that needs to be put into an object, which is a certificate model, and that's just simply taking the cert ARN and applying it to the cert ARN in the model. We need our SSL policy, so this is TLS 1.2. We need our security group that we're going to use to apply to this, and then we need the subnets. So our servers are going to be in different subnets, and those need to be applied and available to the load balancer. So I would just grab all of them that are in that VPC and just apply them. Okay, so then we just go ahead and jump in and create a load balancer. So we're going to create an application load balancer that's internet facing, IPv4, give it a name, and here's our security group and our subnets that we're using. Run that, and boom, we've got a load balancer, but it's not quite ready. Those take a little bit of time to generate in AWS, so we need to run this little piece of code here, which checks to see if it's active. So what we need to do is watch for whether that load balancer is active. If we start trying to apply rules and do things to one that's not active, there may be some errors, and we want to make sure we don't have any errors and this doesn't fail. So we just get the status of the load balancer and loop through and check until it's active. Once it's active, then we can continue on. The next thing we need to do is create another object called the fixed response action configuration. So this is the response that we're going to give if none of our rules match. So when we create a listener, we need at least one default response. And that, I'm just going to have a dump out one that just gives a 503 error and just says, whoops, something went wrong. So that's the 503 in plain text. And we're going to apply that action configuration to an action, which is the fixed response. And I give it an order of 99. There's an order of rules, and we're just going to throw this one at the bottom of 99. So then now we create our listener. So we have our load balancer. Now we need to have the listener attached to that load balancer, and that's going to have our fixed default response. So that's our load balancer. We create a new listener onto our load balancer. Now we're going to be listening on port 443, which is our SSL. So that's HTTPS. Our default action is this first action that we just made. That's our fixed response. And then we have our certificate and our SSL policy. So this certificate model is what it takes. That's why we had to create that earlier. So we do create a lot of models and then use them later and stuff in this. A lot of models being created. Quite deep how many models you have to go through and college all together to try and make all these things work. But anyway, we work through it. Okay. So now we have a load balancer, a listener, a default default action. Now we need to create a rule. So we have the default. Now we need to create something that goes somewhere, right? So we have the first target group. So that we have. So that's going to be new target group. We're going to enable our health check, which is 1. Listen on port 80 for the health check, and protocol HTTP. And the target type is going to be to an instance. And we know have to put this in our VPC that we're using, and we're going to name it to test server. Now, once we create the target group, we need to attach a server to it. So that's going to be an instance ID on port 80 and attach that to our target group. So now we have a target group with an instance connected to it, but there's no traffic going there because it's not connected. It's independent of the load balancer right now. So now we need to create some different items. So we need this odd thing called a target group tuple. And we create one of those so that we can add it to a forward action config. And that creates this odd method that they have for adding rules and stuff and getting traffic sent there. So then we add that to the action. So we have a new object called the action. So now this is going to be what happens when we get traffic. So the action is our forward action config, which is this tuple deal. And then the order we're saying is the first order when this action happens is we send things to our target group and we forward the data to it. Okay, so that's the action. Now we need to make a condition. We have the action. Here's what you do. Now here's when you do it. Okay, so we're going to have to combine all these together once we get down here towards making the rule. Okay, so we have a rule condition, which is, does the host header equal tomtest1 tomstack show? Okay, so if that's the URL that people type in, then it will forward on to the instance that we created up here in our target group. So condition host header based on this URL. So now I need a rule count. So what I do is rules are numbered. Typically they start at 0. So I just go and I ask the listeners, how many are there? Since it starts at 0, the number that comes back will always be 1 additional. So if the first one is there, that's number 0. So the next one is going to be number 1. So now we create it. So new rule with our listener ARN. So we have our listener up there, and then we have way up here in our listener way up here that we did in the front, because we're all attaching this to the same listener. So we don't need a listener for each action that we're doing. It's all under the same listener, but the condition that it moves it is this host header. It's very odd, but you'll see I'll have some images later and it'll help kind of figure it out. Okay, so we have our listener, we have our action and the condition and the priority, which is the rule count. So this is where it's going to be in the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many rules you have. Boom, that's where it's going to be in the count. Okay, so now we have that put in there. all these objects combined together down here create this rule. Now then we do it again. So we do it again. So we have a target group again. We have register an instance with that target group, and we create our tuple. We create our forward action config from the tuple, and then we have our action, and then we add the forward action to it. Target group, actually that's supposed to be target group 2. No, that's target group 1. So no, target group 2. That's what that one is. Okay, so target group 2, and then action type is forward. Then we do all these other conditions as well. So the rule condition is host header, and this is tomtest2. Now we get our rules and count them, which will basically add 1 to it. And then we do the same thing. Do a new rule, listen, action is posted, condition is posted, and the priority is posted. So now we're creating all the objects, finding out where to send the data, and creating the new rule. So, and we can do this over and over again. And you can also take all of this data and put it into a loop. So that all of these pieces are, make a loop of values. So tomtest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, make an array of that, and then loop through here, and it will post, create all of those, on to the load balancer. Okay, so what do we end up with? So we create a load balancer. This is a test that I did earlier. So we get the load balancer. It's active up here, and it's got all of our security groups and subnets and everything onto it. And then if we look at listeners, so we go to listeners, we see it's listening on 443. Got my TLS 1.2 security policy. My certificate is there. And then there's only just this, you can see this default rule here. But underneath there, this thing that says view edit rules. So now we come down here, we can see that the first rule, if tomtest1, then forward to test servers 1. If tomtest2, forward to test servers, this should be 2, but I just had 1 in there, but it will forward to the next set of servers. And there could be more rules. There could be 3, 4, 5, 6. I think you can have quite a few rules in there. And then the default is to send the 503 at the end. So that way, as you're using one load balancer, traffic is coming in and you can forward it to the different servers. Now, the nice thing is, say you're doing a server and you have one there, and okay, we need to do an upgrade. Okay, so you can create a brand new server, do all your updates and upgrades and everything to it, test it directly on the server, or test it, have it be a beta, create a beta rule like tomtest to beta, and then go in there and test it, see how it's working, and then say, okay, now we can change the rule for tomtest2 beta and set just the tomtest2 to go to the new server that you just set up. So essentially it will just instantly switch traffic from the old to the new, and you can do some tests for that. And it'll help move, you're moving traffic around by using these rules, helping you do testing and things like that, and still utilizing the same SSL certificate, still utilizing the same load balancer, all that, and just by using some code like this to set it up. And then you can set this up so that it adds and subtracts and removes and moves all of the rules around just by changing the host header condition as to where you want it to go, and push to different listeners and everything to different servers. Works very well. I've been using it and testing it for quite a while, getting ready to do some production deployments and stuff with it, so it should be pretty nice once it's done and ready to go. So, but that's kind of how you do that, and kind of the reasons why you would want to do that. All right. So if you have any questions about this, this code will be pushed up to my Bitbucket so that you can, plagiarize it and use it as you will. I don't ever charge or anything like that for code that I do or push out there. It's given back to community, which is what I like doing. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and take care.